one thing that I try to tell people, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is although we don't have the population growth in a lot of these Midwestern markets that you have in the Sun Belt or the Smile States, if you will, we don't have that new supply. So for developers, sometimes it might be easier to tell the story of, hey, we're going to Austin because they're seeing X population growth every single year, or we're going to Dallas, or whatever the case is. But if you're not looking at the supply as well, and will that population increase year over year remain the same, that can potentially be a riskier situation than a, quote, riskier market like a St. Louis. Would you agree with that, or do you have a differing opinion there?
Absolutely. And we run into that a lot when a lot of the developers, their equity is coming from institutional, semi-institutional platforms. Those platforms and those institutional companies really want to and need to check boxes before they invest, and population growth is one of them. So the markets like Dallas and Phoenix, they check a lot of boxes when it comes to population growth, rent growth, economics. Midwest is kind of the younger brother when it comes to those. We just remain pretty steady on population growth, but everything got overlooked, I think, back in 21 and 22 when the market was really good. Now that the market's slowing down and we do have this, I don't want to call it oversupply, but we've got a lot more supply in those primary markets than we do secondary markets. It's really allowing the Midwest to outshine some of those markets. So it seems safer. It seems like a safer bet. Hindsight's always 20/20. But I do agree completely that, look, you know what you're going to get here in the Midwest.
Do you find that a lot of the potential buyers that are from out of state don't fully understand some of these Midwest MSAs? Like if we look at St. Louis, for example, if you aren't in St. Louis and you pull 5 or 10 mile demographics or statistics on a Clayton, that might not tell you the true story of what Clayton really is. Do you find that, one, folks don't truly understand some of these markets if they're not from here or operating here, and then two, are some of the other markets you're in similar to St. Louis, or are they a little easier to understand?
The first question on is it harder if groups don't understand it, or if they don't know, do they understand it? St. Louis has a little bit of a stigma when it comes to selling new capital on the Midwest. So I just got off the phone with someone and was talking about how there are so many groups that are willing to go to Kansas City, but they're not willing to go to St. Louis. And when you ask the question, the response is always, it's not for us. There's no really substantiating reason, even though when you look on paper, the fundamentals are very similar. And because of this stigma, and whether it's driven by one little area, maybe it's downtown St. Louis, that just has this negative or gives off this negative perception to groups, it's an immediate no. But you talk to other groups that own 2,000 units here, non-local, they own here in St. Louis, they own in the Southeast. They'll tell you that St. Louis is one of their top performing markets. They own in St. Charles, they own in Maryland Heights, they own in the suburbs. And again, the fundamentals are really strong here, and they've continued to be. St. Louis has grown westward. 20 years ago, Wentzville was just a city you'd drive through to get to Columbia. Now there's apartments being built there. They're getting absorbed. There's rent growth. And St. Charles County is the fastest growing county in Missouri. So it really is easy to overlook a market like St. Louis. And to your question on, are other markets like that? It depends on the market, but yes, a perfect example of negative stigma is Illinois, the state of Illinois. Some people just don't want to touch it. They have this negative stigma that's maybe driven from Cook County, and they apply that to all the way down to Fairview Heights. You look at the fundamentals. I mean, you own in Fairview Heights, you own in Metro East St. Louis. You know as well as I do that the fundamentals are really strong, and you're not affected by that negative political, whatever you want to call it, from Cook County. So that's one, but then you look at maybe Des Moines or Omaha, they seem to get more interest. It checks a lot of boxes, and for that reason, you get a lot of competition. So I think it's a matter of just understanding and willing to look into that market.
I think perception definitely is reality in some cases. I've heard from someone that folks may go to a Kansas City instead of a St. Louis because they know if they lose on that investment, they're not going to lose their job. I don't know if that's true or not, and obviously it wouldn't apply to everyone, but I think that gives folks an edge who are willing to go to a St. Louis or go to parts of Illinois or some other markets. I'm sure, I don't think you guys are in Memphis, but I'm sure Memphis is pretty similar. They have a pretty negative reputation, but the suburbs are amazing.
Exactly.
Is there any particular reason, by the way, why you guys didn't go to Tennessee as well? It sounded like you mentioned every other state, but not.
So we have a Nashville office.
Okay.
And Nashville is growing so quickly that it's a full-time job. So Northmark has a broker that focuses strictly on Tennessee, which is really the main reason. But the transaction velocity there compared to the Midwest overall is significantly higher. It's leaning more towards a primary market, in our opinion, over a secondary market, similar like St. Louis, Kansas City, Des Moines.